What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Nemo Propaganda here, and as I promised, this is the comparison video for the Buchardt E50 and the Radiant Acoustic Clarity 6.2. In this video, I'll tell you how the two speakers compare, how they're similar, how they're different, what you can expect if you're looking at either one, and if you've got both on your radar. Hopefully this video will help you narrow it down further and decide which one is for you. I'll go ahead and say one speaker is not better than the other in this head-to-head or in this battle, whatever you want to call it, or showdown. They are just tonally different. They're both absolute performers in a lot of ways. And for those of you that feel the price tag of either one of these is just a little too high, I'm going to give you guys some affordable options towards the tail end. And I'll tell you what you can expect when you step down in price for something more affordable. But we're going to try to get as close to possible to what I think most of you guys are going to want from a speaker like this if you just couldn't afford it and had to get something cheaper. So no specs on screen because I've already reviewed both of these. I'll link in the description box the full review for both of these speakers. So how are they similar? Well, they both have beautiful cabinets that are fairly unique. The Clarity 6.2 uses an aluminum front baffle, then it's covered in wood, which is just a really interesting approach. I know there's a couple other speakers that use aluminum in the front baffle, but it's usually like a smaller piece and it's on the outside. This is on the inside of the Clarity 6.2. I've never seen a design like that. Moving over to the Buchardt E50, that's got a unique cabinet. It's got that finger joint construction and it is solid wood the whole way through. Like it's not MDF, right? Pretty cool stuff. Both of them use the Purifi Ushindi driver. That's probably the main reason you guys all wanted to see this comparison, I'm guessing. They both use passive radiators. The Buchardt uses a pair of passive radiators. The Clarity 6.2 uses a pair of passive radiators. The difference is the Buchardt E50, I believe, is using custom units designed by SB Acoustics, while the Radiant Acoustics Clarity 6.2 is also using Purifi Ushindi drivers for the passive radiators. Well, not drivers, passive radiators. What else? They're both going to be on the harder side to drive. They both need a good amount of power. I'd say 100 watts RMS or more is going to be a great starting point and plenty for most people in most rooms. If you're not going for crazy neck-breaking volumes, I'd say an honest 50 watts RMS should get you most of the way there. They both bring a lot of strong, powerful, and muscular bass to the table. That's another thing they have in common. And I think those are the main things they have in common. Let me tell you how they compare in the treble, the mid-range, and bass, how they're tonally different. And again, hopefully, my goal, right, if I didn't already say it, is I want to help you make a decision if you're on the fence, right? Maybe you saw these two speakers, they're both on your radar. You want a speaker with that new Purifi driver, right? It's exciting, it's popular, it's got all the newest tech. You just don't know which one's for you, right? So let's get into it. Starting with the high frequency region, in the treble, the Buchardt E50 is going to be ever so slightly smoother than the Clarity 6.2. The Clarity 6.2, its treble attack is going to be ever so slightly sharp, while the Buchardt E50 is going to be ever so slightly soft. So if you like a little bit of a smoother sound, you might prefer the E50. If you like a little bit of sharpness to your treble attack, you might prefer the Clarity 6.2. Neither is better in this category. This is just going to be a personal taste thing. Both speakers bring a lot of detail to the table. They just do it in slightly different ways. The Clarity 6.2 reminds me a lot like Focal, the way they deliver treble. What Focal does is they take a lot of the micro details that are kind of in the background and they push them forward a little bit so they're more front and center, a lot easier to hear. You do give up just a little bit of layering in the treble region to accomplish that, but what it does is it gives you a treble presentation that is highly resolving and highly detailed, and you don't have to listen critically just to hear a ton of detail. That's how the Clarity 6.2 is in the treble region. The Buchardt E50 maintains its layering in the treble region. It still gives you a ton of detail and micro detail. That micro detail is just more layered back within the soundstage, more where it's supposed to be. It's not pushed forward. So again, this is a situation where one's not better than the other. This is really going to come down to personal choice. Customers who are detail first customers, you want to hear absolutely everything in the mix, whether it's artist intent or not, you want to hear it. You may prefer the Clarity 6.2 because those micro details are a little bit easier to hear. Those customers who prefer to preserve layering in the treble region while still getting a more accurate amount of micro detail and resolution may prefer the E50. Let's move down to the mid-range region. Again, these two speakers are going to be fairly different in the mid-range region. The Buchardt E50 is going to be more of a neutral affair in the mid-range region. There's no rise, there's no presence, there's no bump or dip anywhere. The mid-range of the Buchardt E50 is fairly neutral. It's very thick, it's very full-bodied, male voices, you can hear the weight to them, breathy female voices, that that breathiness has some weight to it. Guitars, when they're plucked or strum, you feel, there's weight and body and soul to the music. It's a good, thick, clean, and neutral mid-range. The Clarity 6.2 is a little bit different. It's also full-bodied. It's still, on the thicker side, but not quite as thick and full-bodied as the Buchardt E50. Those looking for the thickest, fullest mid-range may prefer the E50. Those that are looking for a little bit more prominence or presence in the mid-range region may prefer the Clarity 6.2, because the Clarity 6.2 does seem to have a bit of a rise in the mid-range region, around where female vocals are. I noticed female vocals popped quite a bit more on the Clarity 6.2. So the mid-range is like this. You like a mid-range that's more linear, more neutral, fairly thick, fairly full, you're going to like the E50. If you like a mid-range region that has a little bit of a rise to it, a little bit of extra presence to it, and still a good amount of fullness to it, you're going to prefer the Clarity 6.2. Now, let's talk about the bass. The two speakers, again, you guessed it, they are different in the bass region also, guys. So the Clarity 6.2 is going to have the more linear bass. There's no artificial rise or bump really anywhere in the frequency range. It's, both speakers have a strong lift around 40 hertz because they both have really like good juiced up, pumped up bass. It's very thick, very full, The difference here is going to be the Buchardt E50 starts its bass rise closer to 50 hertz. So the Buchardt E50 has, I guess you would say, a slight bit of a mid-bass bump to it. Those of you that like mid-bass and mid-bass articulation may prefer the E50. Those of you that don't or prefer a more linear bass response may prefer the Clarity 6.2. But the way they deliver bass, aside from that, just tuning, is a little bit different also. Let me explain. So, sorry, I said let me explain. I have a pet peeve when content creators say, let me explain. It really bothers me. I don't know if you guys have noticed. It's become super trendy for someone to make a statement and then say, let me explain. But anyways, that was an accident. Sorry. So the Buchardt E50's bass is a little bit more heavy-handed. It's a little bit more aggressive, assertive. It makes its presence known. Its bass is going to be a little bit tighter and a little bit quicker also. Now, the Clarity 6.2 is going to have bass that is not as heavy-handed. It's still thick and powerful, and actually even extends about 1 or 2 hertz deeper, at least in my room. Both speakers get crazy low, so it's kind of near as makes no difference, but the Clarity 6.2 did get a smidgen lower. It's just linear, it's a little bit lighter, and it doesn't sound quite as quick or tight as the Buchardt E50. Now, neither speaker has sloppy bass, but anytime we've got a speaker that's small and compact and has a ton of bass, it's generally not going to be the quickest bass in the world. Those of you who like the tightest, quickest bass possible, and you want a really compact speaker, listen, you're going to have to go with something that's lighter on bass, right? That's just how it is. You're going to want something like an ATC SCM19. You're going to want something like a Focal Aria Evo X or Canta number 1. You're going to want speakers like Triangle, speakers that generally do have bass, but you're going to want to add a subwoofer because the bass isn't super powerful. Those are the types of compact speakers that are tight, quick, and agile with their bass. They're going to be light on bass. You want your speaker to have a lot of bass and be very compact. It's going to take a small hit in tightness and speed. So that's the difference in the bass region. So let me do the key takeaway here, who each speaker is for. I'll try to give you kind of like a buyer or customer profile, help you make your final decision. Let's just assume, just to be clear, you've got an amplifier with a good amount of power. You've got $4,500 for either of these speakers. You like the aesthetics of either one. You're not particularly a fan of AMT nor Dome, like you don't have a preference one way or the other. You just want a speaker with that new Purifi Yeshindi driver. So if you told me You like a high frequency region that is ever so slightly smooth with its delivery, maintains layering within the treble region, but still has a good amount of detail and detail retrieval, but you're not a detail first customer necessarily. So you don't want a presentation like a Focal Canta #1. You want the resolution that comes with a $4,500 speaker, but not beyond artist intent, right? Not beyond accuracy. You just want a good, fair amount of detail, a little bit smooth, resolving, very refined. You want a mid-range that is very full, almost as full as a mid-range can be. You like to hear that weight and breathiness of vocals. You like to hear the thickness when a guitar is strummed, but you want that mid-range to be linear. You don't want any rises anywhere. You want a bass region that is slightly heavy-handed, may draw some attention to itself, is going to be powerful, confident, thick, with strong aggressive attack. That is the Buchardt E50. Now, conversely, if you are more the detail first customer and you want a speaker, I forgot to tell you about one of the biggest differences. So soundstage, both speakers, amazing soundstage. Imaging, massive, massive difference. The Buchardt E50 has outstanding imaging, a lot, no surprise. The Clarity 6.2 has some of the craziest imaging I've ever heard. If you are a detail first customer and you want the most precise, the most pinpoint imaging, like you can, with a razor blade, cut out every single note, that's the Clarity 6.2. You want a mid-range that has a little bit of extra prominence to it, a little bit of a rise around the vocal region to make those vocals project more and deeper into the room. That's going to be the Clarity 6.2. You want a bass region that is more linear, doesn't have a boost around the mid-bass region. You're going to want the Clarity 6.2. So there you have it, guys. I'm taking you through the treble, the mid-range, and bass. Both speakers have great soundstage. Imaging is a huge difference. Treble delivery is a huge difference. Mid-range delivery is a huge difference. Bass delivery is a huge difference. Honestly, in terms of sound quality, the only thing they really have in common is they both stage large. They both have a good amount of refinement in the high frequency and mid-range region. But aside from that, I mean, treble, mid-range, and bass all sound different, and they image very differently also. All right, guys, so if the Clarity 6.2 or Buchardt E50 are too expensive for you, here are some cheaper alternatives that also have a tremendously powerful bass and are relatively compact, because I feel like that's what a lot of you guys want out of a speaker. If you're shopping for one of these, you want a speaker with a ton of bass. So the Dynaudio Special 40 comes in at $3,600. That's the first step down in terms of getting something for less money. It's $900 cheaper. It still gives you a beautiful cabinet, tremendously powerful bass that is absolutely on par with either one of these speakers in terms of its total bass power, its fullness, how agile it is and things like that. I'll be honest though, guys, it's been a really long time since I've heard the Dynaudio Special 40, so it's going to be hard for me to tell you the differences in terms of mid-range and treble. I just barely can remember the bass portion of that speaker by this point, so I don't want to get too much into it, but I'll leave you with this. I have a couple of friends that still have the Dynaudio Special 40, and they've heard the E50, and they feel like, the Dynaudio Special 40, depending on amplification, it's welcome to the party, if you catch my drift. So I'll just leave you with that. Let's say you're like, hey, Dynaudio Special 40 is cool, but I need a cheaper alternative. No problem. Buchardt S400 Mark II is $2,200 for the pair. That's a speaker we all know has tremendously powerful bass. I'll tell you some just quick differences real quick. The Buchardt S400 Mark II compared to either one of these is not going to be quite as resolving, but it is fair. It is resolving enough for its price category. It's a little bit warmer tonally overall compared to both of these speakers. Its mid-range is a little bit richer and warmer as well than both of these. Both of these speakers' mid-ranges are going to be a little bit more neutral by direct comparison. Moving down to the bass, it's interesting. Its bass is more like the Clarity 6.2 in terms of being more linear. It doesn't have that mid-bass rise that the E50 has. And I have my S400 Mark IIs obviously still. They're one of my favorite speakers, and I A/B'd them against the Clarity 6.2, and I was surprised how similar the bass delivery was of those two speakers. Now, of course, the Clarity 6.2 costing more money, and same with the E50. They can play much, much, much louder, right? I love the Buchardt S400 Mark II, but when you chop your budget in half and go from $4,500 to $2,200 and still have a speaker that is very bass capable, one of the things you're going to give up is playback volume. Those of you guys that like to play excessively loud, That's where these more expensive speakers come in, right? Let's say $2,200, you know, you're like, Nemo, that's great. I need a cheaper option still. Okay, no problem. How about the Dynaudio EMIT 20? That's $1,050. We're now 1/4 of the price. And this is still a speaker that has tremendously powerful bass. Now the Dynaudio EMIT 20, at this point, you're not even getting a painted cabinet. With the Buchardt S400, you were still getting a painted cabinet. With the Dynaudio Special 40, you were still getting like a beautiful wood finish cabinet. But once we get down to $1,050 for the Dynaudio EMIT 20, we got a vinyl wrapped cabinet for the most part, right? The front baffle of that speaker does have a few coats of paint on it, and it does look fairly nice. So what are you giving up? Well, the bass of the Dynaudio EMIT 20 is a little bit slower, and it's got quite a bit more bloom to it compared to either of these two. These two are going to be much tighter in the bass region. The Clarity 6.2 and E50 are going to have tighter, quicker, more articulate bass just overall. In the high frequency region, that Dynaudio EMIT 20 tweeter is phenomenal. It is a really fantastic tweeter. It takes an interesting approach of being on the forward side of neutral, much more forward than either of these, but with a treble delivery that is very soft and smooth, smoother than the E50 even. So it's really easy on the ears, and you still get a ton of detail, and it's this really great experience. It's not quite on the level of either of these two speakers, but it is still really good for $1,050. Moving down to the mid-range, is kind of similar to these two speakers in that it's full, it's confident. The bass the speaker has really helps give that mid-range body. Of course, it's not going to have the separation, expansiveness, and air of these two more expensive options. Now, let's say you're like, Nemo, that's cool. I still need a little bit cheaper. No problem. You're going to have to pull out your DIY skills and build this next set. It's the CSS Crichton 1TD, not even the X variant. Let's go for the cheapest one because that thing is still a bass monster. You can buy that thing for around $700, and oh my goodness, is that thing a performer. Now, at this point, you're not even getting an assembled speaker. You're going to have to put this darn thing together yourself. You're going to have to do some soldering, some assembly, you know what I mean, and stuff like that. But once you're done, you're going to get a speaker that still has crazy powerful bass. Now, what are the differences? So the CSS Crichton 1TD is going to be much darker in the treble region than either of these speakers. It's going to be nowhere near as resolving or resolute. You're simply not going to get as much detail. I mean, guys, we're below we're like 1/5 or 1/6 of the price at this point, right? But the treble you do get is still quite good. I will say, as long as you like a speaker with a darker sound, I think the treble on the CSS 1TD is fantastic for the money. Even though it, of course, cannot come close to competing with these. It can't even compete with the Dynaudio Special 40, the EMIT 20, or the Buchardt S400 Mark II, honestly. Excuse me. But it is quite good. Moving down to the mid-range, like these two, it's very full-bodied, but it's much, much warmer. The CSS Crichton 1TD mid-range is more like the Buchardt S400, and that tonally, it's very warm. Neither of these two speakers are very warm in the mid-range. Moving down to the bass, believe it or not, the CSS Crichton 1TD is one of the few speakers that's relatively compact, has a tremendous amount of bass, but is fairly tight with the bass. It's actually tighter than either of these two and fairly quicker than either of these two. Big surprise there. I don't know what CSS did when they designed that driver, but that's just, it's crazy what that thing can do. Now, of course, with a DIY speaker, you know, you might have some supplemental costs or some hidden costs. And I do want to mention that you want to get a nice, you know, paint on that cabinet. If you can't do that yourself, you might have to pay someone else to do that, right? If you don't have the assembly skills to get it right, you might have to pay someone else to do that. Even if you do have the assembly skills to do it, you need to spend a couple dollars on wood, you know, wood glue, clamps, you know, things like that, finishing materials. So by the time you're finished, you might be in at about $1,000. But once you do, you get a speaker that's pretty sweet, honestly. So those are your more affordable alternatives, guys. If you got any questions, you can ask in the YouTube comments section below. This YouTube channel also has a free Discord server. So if you got a more complex question where maybe it might be helpful for us to see a picture of your room, that's what the free Discord is for. Link is in the description below. Link to the full review of both of these speakers is also in the description box below. If you guys got any questions, holler. Until next time, take care.